getting shit done too. So let's move forward a little bit. We've thought about these bigger plans. We've thought about what matters, what we want to achieve in life more broadly. I've talked about big 5-year plans, really thinking through that sort of stuff. But a 5-year plan is made up of yearly plans. Now, I'm convinced that yearly plans aren't good enough. I'm convinced of that. But in certain places, they're essential. This is one, I think, which is really important for my undergrads. This is important for people who are on master's, PhD programs, and who just have smaller jobs to get done rather than some of the bigger things that we're doing in 5 years, or can split up these bigger 5-year plans into smaller versions. So I think that a yearly plan can be quite problematic. I think that it can still lead to quite short-term thinking. So as long as you've tackled that, and as long as you're not thinking with years as the be-all and end-all, because that will fundamentally limit you. I'll give you an example. I've published 2 papers this year. Right, what 2 papers am I publishing next year? What 2 papers am I publishing next year? 6 papers, well done, that sounds incredible. But what could have been achieved in 3 years, which was bigger than the sum of its parts, right? 6 papers, like the way I look at this now is, what 6 papers mean? What does it actually mean if they're not part of something bigger, right? 100 like papers that say something, or 50, or 5 books, or something that can be so much bigger. That's where I kind of start from. So just take that as a kind of a word of warning. Again, though, if you're an undergrad student, don't sweat it, right? You just got your job in front of you. Let's get this year done. Where they can be really useful, a year planner, is that we live in years, right? We live in this kind of circling around the sun. It's actually quite a useful way to think about the ebbs and flows, the seasonality of life. And at university, that's so clear, right? We know what's going to happen. If we've done it for a few years, we can advise our students what's going to happen, where are the bottlenecks. We can tell our first years that after about 4 or 5 weeks, they'll probably fall out with their housemates and want to go home, right? We can tell our second and third year students, all of our students actually, that when you come back in January, there's going to be a real lull and it's going to feel pretty dark and dingy, and you're going to have exams, and that's a real hard time for some people. So you've got to be prepared for that and put things in place. So we can prepare for these things because we know what's around the corner. We know that spring follows winter, etc. So they can help us see bottlenecks. Again, something for my students, something for any of us, but where deadlines are, especially if you're in a position where you can't pick your deadlines, right? I can largely pick my deadlines and then ignore them anyway. But if you're not in that position, or you're daft enough to make self-imposed deadlines that you want to hit, which you shouldn't do, or you're not at all, you've got no control over your deadlines, well, then you can align them up and you can see where they are and you can work backwards. Now, a weekly plan, when you're focusing in that detail, which is what we'll come on to next, doesn't help you see those bottlenecks. If you can't see that bigger kind of plan and that bigger journey, the weekly plan it's rubbish. It doesn't do anything. It has to be situated with these bigger kind of processes. We can also think about broad focuses over the course of a year. So I know that the last week of October, I have to shift my focus to teaching. And for about 4 or 5 weeks after that point, wherever the start of term is, my focus needs to be on sorting my modules out, figuring out what my students are like, what they need from me, and making sure that the module starts right. So I put all of my focus into that. What that means is that after about 4 or 5 weeks, I've made sure that the students are happy. I've made sure that we started the module fine, and then it just trundles along. So I usually make sure that 4 weeks is in my diary, where I don't do much at the weekend. I don't take on projects, and I try and make sure that my PhD students are aware that booking in meetings might be a little bit more challenging at that time, and that if we can just move things around a little bit, if they don't need me, then that's a way to kind of work for just a few weeks, just while I kind of keep focused there. So we all have this, right? We know when these times are, so we can feed them in. So I think the yearly plan is really important for this. It helps also when we have these kind of medium-term focuses. right, what am I doing for this next month? Or what's my overarching focus for this next month? And then therefore, what's my overarching focus in 4 months' time? It helps us take the pressure off. One thing that I've found in life is once I've gone, right, this is what I have to achieve this year, this is what I want to achieve this year, what roughly do I need for that time, and lay it out. Well, the thing that I've got to achieve here, I won't worry about while I'm here. And I'll do things in that more sequential way. And one of the things that happens to me is that my head thinks a lot. It goes around in circles a lot until I get things written down. So the lists are obviously very important. And if you're the sort of person who has this issue, you know that the lists are a godsend, especially because my memory is so bad as well. So I can look at it down here. I've got my list there. That's my year. So that means that can be plotted into the year to figure out where those things have to fall. That means I can forget about that stuff, right? The 3 or 4 on there that I can't manage at the moment and I can't do at the moment, they just don't bother me. So that takes a lot of stress away, or potential stress. When you're managing multiple roles at work, like we do, the teacher, the administrator, the supervisor, the researcher, when you're managing these different roles, it's quite important to pass them out at different times, or at least the main focus of your attention gets passed out into different times. So in the summer, you're going to be spending much less time on emails, right? So you feed that in. Your focus in the summer has to be not on emails and not on meetings. It has to be. And that means you can focus on other stuff. And you can go into that month in the summer, or the 2 months, 3 months in the summer, and you can really focus on, these are my top priorities. This is where my energy has to go. And therefore, when I come to time block my week, I'm going to leave half an hour 3 times a week to check emails. Okay, that might be a little bit too little for some people, but I can get away with that, which means that I get stuff done in the summer. I get shit done in the summer. Okay, so that's kind of the way to think about this as the goal for the yearly plan. But there's a little bit more to it than that. It's quite hard to do when you first start doing these yearly plans. And anyone who's tried will know how loose they are at it. It's a skill like anything. One of the keys that I've found is to really consider the details, but the details of life. What tends to happen is people look at it and they don't think about the details of life. The details of life are an absolute mess. So it's hard to think about it, but it's possible. So when I say that, what that means is that people kind of ignore the details of life and just put a month in where they're going to do X, right? I'm going to write this paper, without thinking, oh, actually, I've got birthdays, I've got childcare, I've got X, Y, Z. These things that I don't know how they're going to lay out and what's going to happen. I need to leave some latency for that. So the details of life need to be fed in. So that means, okay, my focus is going to be on this, but I've got these things as well. Therefore, maybe actually I need a little bit more time to achieve this thing. Also, practice is needed. So you may well plan the year, but very quickly after the first couple of months, look back at it and go, right, okay, this is not working out as I thought. And the worst thing in the world, and this will come back in the next couple of videos, is to make a plan and then be a slave to it, because it's your plan. So to be a slave to something that you once created is ridiculous. It's totally up to you how you address this plan. It's there to be shifted. It's a tool. And if the tool doesn't work, you change it. So an eye on the detail, an eye on practice, and being a complete realist about it. So many times it's the classic thing when I get my dissertation students come to see me in their 3rd year, and they tell me they're going to do this and they're going to use mixed methods and they're going to do this theoretical idea about this topic that's never been researched. I'm like, whoa. Just tone everything down a little bit. This is a year. It feels like it's a massive length of time, but it's not. So I'm kind of saying the opposite to the 5-year plan. The 5-year plan, we think big. 5-year plan, we shoot for the stars and we hit the moon. A year plan, we keep things chilled out and we make sure that we're not biting off more than we can chew, and that we work through these things in a progressive but simple way. Builds in some latency, builds in rest time, recovery, because the last thing we want is to work like a dog for 4 months and then get burnt out and ruin the rest of the year. all about consistency over time rather than hammering it once or twice. Same as the gym analogy, right? Go to the gym and you're really motivated, so you drill it for 2 hours, then you can't exercise for the next 3 days because you're too sore. Keep doing that, you'll get injured and you won't be able to exercise for the next few months. Then you'll stop exercising. So it's that little and often vibe, I think, with the year plan. Making sure that in that time frame, you've given yourself plenty of room for all the other stuff that comes up. Yeah, so a way of thinking about this is to really figure out what's appropriate to you. Now, you can't do that unless you've got some sort of kind of personal self-audit going on. So that's something that I talk about on the membership site in terms of the academic strategy. So what is it that you're good and bad at? What do you like and don't like? Once you've kind of done that, then you can start to map out what you can achieve in a certain amount of time, and also what's appropriate to you, not in terms of just your abilities, but what you want to do. What tends to be the case is that your reference point is other focused. Oh, X in the department did 5 papers this year, so I've got to at least do 4. No, you don't. That's ridiculous. You do what you want to do that fits with what you want to try and achieve. And if your sole aim in life is to achieve more than that person, well, yeah, fine, do that and be in some sort of weird competition with a person who doesn't really matter to you. If that's your goal, go for it, you weirdo. But what would be better is to think, you know what, I can do one really good paper in a year, and I'm going to make that a really, really good paper. I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking of it, and I'm going to be proud of it at the end of it. Okay, cool. That makes a lot of sense to me. So figuring out what's appropriate to you, not being swayed by others, not being kind of like the demands of tradition or norms or whatever, figuring out what matters to you. Yes, of course, it's a competition, this world that we live in. I get it, I do get that. But also, I'm very adamant that we don't have to compete in the same way as everyone thinks we do. We can do things differently. We can make things work for us while still having some sort of versions of success. It just takes a little bit of thinking about what success looks like. Anyway, I've moved back to the bigger issues. Let's stay focused on this. So map out the year, think about where the pinch points are, think about where your break times are. Obviously put your holidays in. I mean, that should go without saying, right? But build yourself in that little bit of time of like, exams are here, course boards are here. Well, let's not worry too much about working until we get a bit further on. Or if you're an undergrad, think about the time off that you need to visit home to stay happy. If you're a PhD student, build in some break times just all across the board, right? Take a day off a week, whatever, figure it out. Make sure that you've got something that enables you to not get burnt out, because it happens to all PhD students. It can be quite challenging, the PhD process. So really think on that. But whoever you are, whatever you're using this year planner for, really give it some thought, right? You're planning a year of your life, right? You're going to get probably 70 or 80 of them. So you're planning a 70th or 80th of your life. That's significant. So put some time into it, put some effort into it. If it's wrong, don't worry about changing it and developing it, and genuinely put some time into it and focus on the details. And then what you'll find once you've got that and you've locked it down and you've considered it, the move into the weekly plans makes much more sense. You know, it's the same as a computer. You put in bad data, bad commands, it'll bring out bad outcomes. Same with this. If your broad plans don't make sense, your weekly plans will be a complete waste of time. Okay. So that's getting shit done, number 2. Move into the more specific stuff now, where we start talking about actually doing these weekly plans.